have only ever attempted one built-up model of a warship in the age of sail, which was based, or so I thought, on the US Navy brig Lexington, as described by Charles Davis, except that he used the wrong ship. However, I learned a lot from this experience, thanks especially to M. Shed at the Bristol Maritime Museum, who allowed me to see at close hand the model that Leonard Peterson had used for his Rigging Period Ship Models book. To be perfectly frank, I was somewhat carried away by the complexities of the rigging and numerous other deck fittings, and thus gave up any attempt to fit this 1/32 scale model with remote control. So it just became a static model, as you see in this picture. Well, now, turning to my second model, the next photograph, which I first reported to you on some months ago, the subject was suggested to me by our chairman based on HM Sloop Ferret 2, built in 1711. Now, this stern view shows it at an early stage of construction, along with one of my boxwood logs, which has been my basic raw material for building it, together with my bandsaw, which you can see there, for cutting it up. Now, I suppose most of us tend to complete a model prior to giving a presentation. For this one, what I'm attempting to do is to show each group of items before they are assembled into the completed model. My photographs are mainly static, whereas some degree of videoing would have been better, but I'm without a camera mate to manage that. The next photograph shows the completed view of the hull with supports in place for the decking, which will be screwed down with nuts and bolts as and when remote control equipment is put in place in plastic food containers, which is my plan, in order to keep the kit dry. This next photograph, photograph number 5, shows the complete stern using my own design, which was derived from sketches and models seen, particularly in the National Collection at Chatham. And may I say how helpful they were at Chatham in allowing me to see their models. The lights are real glass with plenty of Yoo-hoo glue around them to keep the water out. Photograph 6, this next photograph, simply shows the mast step down in the center of the photograph there. And this next photograph, photograph 7, shows the fore and middle parts of the deck set out in a planking pattern of 4. You may be able to see in the bottom of the photograph there and further up what I mean. These planks are stuck down onto card, which I mark out with the correct pattern, or so I hope, beforehand. In actual fact, I haven't actually got the bow part right, and I'm busy making a new one at the moment. So we'll see how my second attempt goes at making a more accurate layout for the planks, the planking. To separate one plank from another, I have used thick black paper card. I have then sanded down the whole deck, section by section, and varnished them over on both sides, and in particular around the edges to try and stop, of course, the water, any damp seeping in. And that also includes the waterways, which you can just see around the sides if you look carefully. Photograph 8 shows the camber of the deck. Rather than using boxwood, I've used pine framing underneath. This next photograph, number 9, shows where I've made a round seal, which you can see in the center of the photograph there, where the mast goes through the deck, which I've called the deck collar. It may indeed have some other rather better technical title. Because I do not want to make this a permanent feature, I will experiment with thin leather, an idea which I will also use with, where the rudder post goes up through the stern. For making this seal, I started with a square of apple wood and drilled a hole using a bit, the same diameter as the mast, and then used a knife to make a complete outer circle. I'm just going to, if you keep with this photograph, I've also used the same sort of idea to prevent the boom with its jaws slipping down onto the deck. I will put in a removable pin so that again the whole unit can be taken to pieces. And I've made a parallel using thin leather and beads, and another for the gaff as yet not fitted. Photograph 10 shows the two main deck sections loosely placed in place. Of course, other hatches and pumps, etc., have all still got to be added. The largest of these hatches will be, in the end, my main access to the remote control units once they're in place in their plastic boxes. And this should allow me to fix the outer edges of the decks at the waterways to the inner pink sides, which you can see there, of the hull to prevent water ingress. Now, turning to the making of the trestle tree and cross trees, you see this in photograph 11. These are made of pine, but with boxwood planking on the underside. Photograph 12, the next photograph, shows the cap that I've made for the joining of the two mast sections. And you see the cap, and I made this from a solid piece of boxwood, which was difficult to produce in terms of the small square hole with a chisel, but of course the circle, which I did with a bit, was easy. Photograph 13 shows the hoops, which will connect the mainsail luff edge to the mast. These are made of boxwood and have the disadvantage of being somewhat brittle, but they allow for a protrusion, which you can see on each of the rings there, with a small hole, so that they can be attached to the mainsail via small brass-edged holes along the luff side. Now, what I hope to do with these, because of their brittle nature, is to paint a thin layer of wood glue on each hoop and then add varnish when the glue is dry. And I hope that then they will retain sufficient strength and won't come to bits. Some of you may have comment on that, but anyway, I know also that a lot of people use wood shavings, but it seems to me it's rather difficult when you've made a round hoop out of wood shavings then to attach it to the sail. Photograph 14 shows how I've drawn yet another diagram. I'm very dependent on diagrams, I'm sure all of you are, to help get the scale and the practicalities right. Now this one shows the two parts of the mast from the deck upwards with the boom and the gaff, as shown in this next photograph there at 15, and you can see the jaws of each. For the masting, I have used tough pine, as in garden tools. It's strong enough and yet capable of being pared down, and the same for the boom and gaff, except that I've used an even stronger wood for creating the jaws on each. Now, the next photograph, 16, shows the stern area, which has yet to be completed, although I've been busy making rather a lot of progress today on it. And it will have an entrance on the port side and steps to the quarterdeck on the starboard side. The next photograph, 17, shows you the mainsail. Now, I have to say, I am no good at sewing or anything like that, so I've had the mainsail made for me. It shows also the mast, the deck collar, another similar collar for preventing the boom crashing onto the deck, the boom, the hoops, and the gaff, and how the hoops will be attached to the sail via small brass eyelets on the luff edge of the sail, which you may not be able to see. I can just see one of them. Yeah, I can see two actually, but they're all the way up there where each of the hoops is. This photograph shows the mainsail collapsed and folded down. The next stages of my model making will cover two more sails, they being the flying jib and inner jib, although one of you may correct me on the latter towards it being a stay sail. Not quite sure, being so much of a novice as I am. I'm doing this on purpose, rather as in making a yacht, so as to help me to master model boat sailing before I attach a square sail as per the original Ferret 2 with its one mast setting. It will also obviously be necessary for me to adjust the 3.5 kilogram lead false keel to take account of the extra weight of masts and all the rest of it since my initial flotation, which I showed you some months ago on my cousin's lake when it was pouring with rain. And of course, I've yet to address the bowsprit area, which so far I've done nothing about. Now, for my latest 2 further bits of progress, starting with the quarterdeck. As you can see, I've drawn out on card the planking pattern. And what I've done is I've left in the 2 white spaces there, it all looked like that when it was drawn in. So you can see that I've put the planks in now, with the exception of those 2 bits, and they will be filled in. You can also see on either side my dark black card, and then you can see, of course, in the rest of it, how the dark black card appears. I was challenged as to whether this might not spread all over the place and make a filthy, smudgy mess. But the fact of the matter is, it has not done that. So there we are. What I do is I start in the middle and I work outwards, sticking 1 plank on at a time and putting the card in alongside each plank. Again, what I do is apply Yoo-hoo glue to both surfaces, that is the wood and the card, allow it to get tacky, and then clamp it together, holding it tightly, and that seems to work. Now, for my final piece of work, which I've just completed, the rudder assembly. Here we are. And this shows 4 bands made of thin brass coming from the stern, each with a small female connection in the center, soldered on. Each band is spread round the stern post, and each is fixed with 6 pins into the stern post and stuck in as well as I could. The rudder with 4 corresponding male connections is then hung onto the former, having first been pushed up through the helm port with the tiller fixed to the top of the rudder. You can see that. And indeed, I'm going to experiment again with thin leather to try and make a rudder coat for waterproofing purposes underneath the stern. Just to finish off, no doubt all of you have got your favorite adhesives. Well, I keep on fiddling about and trying various ones. Apart from outside wood glue and Yoo-hoo, I've used JB Quick, which did an excellent job on the tiller. I've also used stuff called Deluxe Perfect Plastic Putty, which seems to be good for small cracks. And I'm also using GS Hypo Cement, which I'm going to try for the locking of small knots on rigging. Well, that's perhaps controversial because some of you probably don't think that that should happen at all. But the great thing about this stuff is it doesn't seem to fix your fingers forever together. But whether it'll fix the rigging well enough remains to be seen. Thank you very much.